I found personal lubricant in my husband's car and swapped it with industrial superglue. What happened next brought the entire fire department to our doorstep, and my son had to witness the most humiliating moment of his father's life. I'm grateful you're here. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments what city you're from. I want to see how far this story travels. I was standing in our kitchen, the silence so heavy it felt like drowning. That old wooden clock my grandmother left me kept ticking, each sound hammering guilt into the walls. My husband, Marcus, had just walked through the door from another late business meeting, but his face told a different story. He looked haunted, like someone carrying a secret that weighed more than he could bear. His expensive suit hung loose on his shoulders. He tossed his briefcase onto the couch and fell into bed without even removing his shoes. The cologne he wore, that familiar sandalwood scent, was mixed with something else, a floral perfume, sweet, invasive, feminine. Not mine. A few moments later, his snoring echoed through the house, a sound that used to comfort me. Now it felt like mockery. I stood up and began tidying the living room, his jacket, his wallet, his phone lying face up on the coffee table. The screen was still glowing. An email notification. I frowned. Marcus hated email. He always told me, "Rebecca, I'm too old for all that tech nonsense. Just call me." But there it was, a new email, staring at me like a confession. My hand trembled as I opened it. The message was short. "You were amazing tonight, Daddy," followed by a red heart emoji. I froze. The air left my lungs. Daddy? Who calls him that? And why does it sound so intimate, so wrong? I scrolled down, searching for more context, but there was nothing. Just a strange email address, a random string of letters and numbers that offered no answers. A chill ran through me, not from the air conditioning, but from somewhere deeper, something primal. I glanced toward the bedroom. Marcus turned over in his sleep, his face peaceful, completely unaware of the storm building inside me. My heart pounded like I was the one doing something wrong. I quickly set the phone down, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I continued cleaning, but now my movements were robotic, mechanical. I picked up his clothes to take to the laundry room. As I emptied his pockets, my fingers brushed against folded paper. Crisp, new. It was a receipt from an upscale steakhouse in Austin, dated today. I stared at it. Austin? He told me he was meeting clients in Houston. Marcus hated driving to Houston. Too much traffic, he always said. But Austin, that's where his college sweetheart used to live. A fact he mentioned more than once over the years. The receipt showed a party of 2, an expensive bottle of Merlot, the same wine he bought me on our 15th anniversary, and 2 entrees, ribeye and lobster tail. Tried to remember the last time Marcus took me somewhere like that. Maybe 8 years ago, when I finally paid off the mortgage on my flower shop. That memory used to make me smile. Now it felt like a lie I'd been telling myself. I pulled out my phone and took pictures, the email, the receipt. I didn't want to believe any of this, but a woman's intuition after 38 years of marriage is impossible to ignore. Something was happening, and I had to know what. My hands trembled, not just with anger, with fear. Fear of what I was about to discover, fear that my entire life was about to collapse. I walked to the garage. Marcus's SUV was still warm. The air smelled like gasoline and that same sweet floral perfume from his jacket. I opened the driver's side door and turned on my phone's flashlight. I checked the front seat. Loose change. An empty soda can. Nothing unusual. But when I reached into the glove compartment, my fingers touched something plastic, slippery. I pulled it out and my stomach dropped. A tube of personal lubricant, half empty. residue dried around the cap. I stood there in the dark garage, staring at it like it was a weapon. Marcus and I hadn't been intimate in years. He always said he was tired. That work drained him. That age had taken its toll. So what was this for? The question echoed in my mind, louder and louder. I felt paralyzed, but I forced myself to stay calm. I put it back exactly where I found it. I wiped my hands on a rag, scrubbing hard, like I could erase what I'd just touched. Then I kept searching. Under the back seat, I found crumpled tissues. They smelled like that floral perfume. Strong, overpowering, not subtle like my lavender. This was loud, defiant. I took more photos, the lubricant, the tissues, evidence I hoped I'd never need. I closed the car and went back inside. The weight of everything I'd found pressed down on me like concrete. I sat at the kitchen table and picked up Marcus's phone again. By now, I was certain he was cheating. I checked his text messages. Only work conversations. Dry, boring. His email inbox was clean except for that one message. I checked sent items, drafts, trash, nothing. Everything was too clean, too perfect, like he'd erased every trace. He's good at this, I thought bitterly. A professional liar. My anger was cold now, hard. And beneath it, something else was stirring, a need for truth, a hunger for justice, no matter the cost. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The kitchen was still dark when I started making breakfast. 2 scrambled eggs, toast, black coffee the way Marcus liked it. I'd barely slept. The images from last night kept spinning in my head. The lubricant, the receipt, that email. Marcus came downstairs looking exhausted. His hair was messy. His eyes were bloodshot. He sat at the table, took a sip of coffee, and set the cup down without finishing it. "I've got an important meeting today," he said in a scratchy voice, not looking at me. "I'll probably be home late." He was so casual about it, like lying to me was second nature. I nodded, forcing a smile, though I wanted to scream. "Where's the meeting?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "With who? In Austin again?" But I bit my tongue and simply said, "Okay, drive safe." He stood up, patted my shoulder like I was a coworker, and left. The door closed behind him. The kitchen fell silent, and I sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me. I couldn't just sit around making theories. I needed proof, hard evidence. I picked up my phone and searched for the number Mrs. Chen had given me years ago. She was an old friend from the flower shop, and she'd once told me about a private investigator who specialized in infidelity cases. "Rebecca, if you ever need him, his name is David. Very discreet, very reliable." I never thought I'd use that number, but here I was. I dialed. My voice shook with every ring. "Mrs. Chen, can you help me get in touch with David? I need him." There was a long pause on the other end. Then she said softly, "Rebecca, what's going on? Did Marcus do something?" I sighed. I didn't want to explain over the phone. My pride was too bruised. "I just need to know the truth. Can you help me?" Mrs. Chen agreed immediately. An hour later, I got a text from David. "Mrs. Anderson, don't worry, I'll help you." The message was short, but it gave me a sliver of relief. A lifeline in a sea of lies. At noon, I met David at a small coffee shop downtown. It smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon. I chose a corner table where no one would notice me. David walked in, middle-aged, average height, wearing a plain gray shirt and carrying a worn leather bag. His eyes were sharp, like he could see through people. I handed him a flash drive with all the photos I'd taken. The email, the receipt, the lubricant, the tissues. "This is all I have," I said, my voice barely steady. "I think my husband is cheating on me." The words tasted like ash. David nodded, reviewing each image on his tablet. His face was calm, professional. He made notes in a small notebook. "Mrs. Anderson, I understand. I'll start following Mr. Anderson this afternoon. Don't worry. I'll contact you as soon as I have something." I looked at him, fighting back tears. "Thank you. I just want to know the truth, whatever it is." David's expression softened. "I'll do my best. Go home. Act normal. Don't let him suspect anything." I left the coffee shop and walked through the crowded street, but I'd never felt more alone. 38 years of marriage. A lifetime built on trust that was now crumbling beneath my feet. I'd given Marcus everything. My youth, my loyalty, my belief that he was a good man. And now I was paying a stranger to follow my own husband. The irony was suffocating. That night, I was sitting in my flower shop, going over inventory lists. The smell of roses and lilies, usually so calming, felt hollow. My phone buzzed. A message from David. I opened it, my heart racing. It was a photo of Marcus, in his blue dress shirt, walking into a fancy restaurant, holding hands with a woman. I zoomed in. My breath caught. It was Nicole, my daughter-in-law. She was wearing a tight red dress, heavy makeup, dark lipstick, her hair down and flowing. They didn't look like father-in-law and daughter-in-law. They looked like lovers, their bodies turned toward each other, intimate, familiar. I sank into my chair, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Nicole, how was this possible? At family dinners, she and Marcus barely spoke. They acted distant, cold even. I thought they just didn't get along. Now I realized it was all a performance, a carefully rehearsed act, for my benefit, for my son's benefit. David sent more photos. In one, they were sitting at a candlelit table in a secluded corner, flowers between them. Nicole was leaning toward Marcus, smiling. He was raising his glass to hers, his eyes soft, tender. I stared at that photo and felt my chest crack open. In 38 years, Marcus had never looked at me like that, not even when we were young, when I was that girl from Dallas with long hair and bright eyes. He used to look at me that way once. Or maybe I just imagined he did. Now that look belonged to her. Late that night, a video arrived from David. The clock on my wall read 2 a.m. I put in my earbuds and pressed play. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. In the video, Nicole leaned close to Marcus's ear, whispering something that made him laugh. Loud, genuine. A laugh I hadn't heard in years. Her voice sounded sweet. Her eyes sparkled under the restaurant lights. Then they stood up. Marcus opened the car door for her like she was royalty, like she was precious. I replayed the video over and over. Each time felt like another knife in my back. Nicole, my daughter-in-law, the woman I'd welcomed into my family, the woman I'd taught how to arrange bouquets for weddings, the woman I'd treated like a daughter, and Marcus, the man I'd built a life with, the man I'd trusted with everything. What were they doing behind my back, behind my son Kevin's back? The questions came faster than I could process them. I saved all the photos and the video to a flash drive. I made notes, dates, times, locations, even the name of the restaurant. My hands worked on autopilot, but my mind was chaos. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe Marcus and Nicole were capable of something this cruel, this low. But the evidence was right in front of me. Undeniable. A mountain of proof I couldn't ignore. I stayed in the flower shop, surrounded by the scent of fresh blooms that should have brought me peace. But all I felt was my world collapsing. I remembered when Marcus used to help me carry boxes of supplies when the shop first opened, when we'd laugh together in that tiny back room, dreaming of the future. Now those memories felt like beautiful lies I'd lived for too long. The next morning, I was arranging a large order for a hotel, downtown. The smell of eucalyptus and baby's breath filled the shop, but it felt empty. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. Another message from David. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm sending you more evidence." My heart sank. I wiped my hands and opened the message. A series of photos appeared. The first showed Marcus in his usual gray suit, leaving a law office near the city square. Next to him was Nicole in a beige blazer and skirt, her hair pulled back, wearing oversized sunglasses, a pathetic attempt at disguise. They were walking close together, too close, not like in-laws, like a couple. In the next photo, they were standing in front of a luxury hotel, glass doors, gold signage. I zoomed in, desperate to find some detail that would prove this wasn't what it looked like. But there was nothing. They looked comfortable, natural, like they'd done this before. Then came a short video. I pressed play. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would explode. The footage was shot from a distance, but it was clear enough. Marcus and Nicole were on a third-floor balcony. His arm was around her waist. She was resting her head on his shoulder, her hair moving gently in the breeze, and then, like a final blow, they kissed. Brief, but unmistakable. I replayed it frame by frame. Each image burned deeper into my soul. The curtain behind them moved, and Nicole stepped out onto the balcony again, running to hug Marcus, her face glowing with happiness, like a woman in love. I slumped in my chair, gripping the edge of the table to keep from falling apart. David wrote, "They also rented the room for the afternoon. It looks like they're staying overnight. I'll keep watching." I read the message over and over, my throat tight. Just hours earlier, Marcus had texted me. "Rebecca, I won't be home tonight. Have to meet a potential investor from out of town. Get some rest." The tone was sweet, caring, just like it had been for years. But now I knew it was all a lie, a well-constructed, well-practiced lie, a potential investor from out of town. He wasn't out of town. He was here, in a luxury hotel, with our daughter-in-law. I opened my laptop and saved every photo and every video. Each time I clicked save, I stared at the image, making sure I wasn't hallucinating. In the video, Marcus's gaze toward Nicole was so tender. The way he touched her hair reminded me of how he used to touch mine 30 years ago. We were young then, and I believed our love would last forever. A promise whispered under the Texas sky. Now, seeing this, all I saw was betrayal and lies. I remembered family gatherings, everyone sitting around the table. Nicole always sat far from Marcus. Sometimes she'd roll her eyes at him. Kevin used to joke, "Mom, I think Nicole can't stand Dad. She avoids him like the plague." I believed it. I thought they just didn't mesh. But now I understood. It was all fake, a choreographed performance. They acted perfectly in front of me, in front of Kevin, in front of the entire neighborhood. I felt like a fool, a blind wife, betrayed by two people right under my nose. People passed by outside, living their normal lives, unaware of what was happening on that hotel balcony. But David had captured it all. Every moment. I replied to him, "Thank you. Please keep watching. I need to know everything." He answered briefly, "I will. Stay calm." That night, I returned to the house that had been my home with Marcus for nearly 4 decades. It felt foreign now, like a museum of lies. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. I printed all the evidence. Photos of Marcus and Nicole leaving the law office, photos of them entering the hotel, photos of them on the balcony, every frame of the video. I carefully arranged them, sealed the envelope, and hid it at the bottom of the drawer under old family photos. I looked at a picture of the four of us, Marcus, Nicole, Kevin, and me, at Kevin's promotion party a few years ago. Nicole was smiling, her arm around Kevin. Marcus stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder, looking proud. Now, looking at it, all I wanted was to tear it to pieces, to rip their smiling faces from my memory. The next morning, just before dawn, I heard the front door open slowly. Marcus stumbled in, smelling like whiskey. "The investor was tough, Rebecca," he complained, his voice hoarse. His eyes were bloodshot. I had to drink a lot. I'm exhausted. I was standing in the kitchen with a glass of water in my hand, watching him perform, watching him rub salt in the wound. "Rest," I replied calmly in the voice of a dutiful wife. "You have work tomorrow." He nodded, patted my shoulder like nothing had happened, and dragged himself to the bedroom. Minutes later, he was snoring. Peaceful. Like he'd never betrayed me. Like he'd never spent the night in a hotel with our daughter-in-law. When I was sure Marcus was asleep, my phone vibrated. A call from David. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Mrs. Anderson, I recorded their conversation in the hotel parking lot. I used directional audio equipment. They didn't notice. I'm sending it to you now." My heart pounded. "Thank you, David. Send it." Minutes later, an audio file appeared in my messages. I put in my earbuds, sat at the table, and pressed play. The first thing I heard was Nicole's voice, cold, calculating. "Dad, hurry up with that fake contract. I want control of that flower shop chain. I want that old woman out of the house." I felt like I'd been punched. I gripped the phone tightly. Then came Marcus's voice, deep, confident. "Don't worry about the paperwork. Rebecca doesn't suspect a thing. Leave it to me. She trusts me too much." It felt like a knife twisting in my heart. They weren't just cheating on me. They were planning to steal everything I'd built. The flower shop chain, all the sweat, the tears, the sleepless nights, building relationships with vendors, winning contracts with hotels and event planners. It was all mine. Marcus never once worked a shift in the shop, never signed a contract, never dealt with suppliers, and now he and Nicole wanted to take it all, to kick me out of the house I'd made a home. I almost broke down, but I held myself together long enough to copy the audio to the flash drive where I kept the other evidence. I wrote down the time and location, trying to keep myself steady in the storm. The next morning, as I arranged flowers in the shop, my phone buzzed again. David sent another batch of photos, taken with a telephoto lens. In them, Marcus and Nicole were inside his car with a thick stack of papers in front of them. Nicole had a red pen and was marking the document. Marcus, next to her, was nodding and smiling. David wrote, "I overheard something. It seems they want to use a contact at a notary's office to make the transfer. I'll investigate further." I zoomed in on the photo. I could see letters on the paper, though I couldn't read them clearly. But I knew these weren't normal work documents. They were planning to steal everything I'd worked for. Step by step. I sat there among the buckets of fresh flowers that smelled so sweet, but I felt like my entire world was collapsing. I reopened the audio file, put in my earbuds, and listened to every phrase, every word they said. That old woman. That's what Nicole called me. I remembered when she first joined the family, when I taught her how to make centerpieces, when I hugged her like a daughter. I thought she was family, that she and Kevin would build a beautiful future together, and Marcus, the man I'd loved since I was a girl in Dallas, who swore he'd be with me until the end. They'd made a fool of me. A joke. A regular customer came in, Mrs. Lou, who always bought flowers for her book club. "Rebecca, your shop is busier than ever. I'm so happy for you. she said warmly. I forced a smile. Thank you. I'm doing my best. But inside, I was shattered. I wondered what she'd think if she knew the truth. Would she see me as a strong woman, or just a fool betrayed by her husband and daughter-in-law? I wrapped Mrs. Liu's bouquet, said goodbye, and sank into my chair. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Instead, a cold rage burned inside me, like fire in a kiln, ready to explode. That night at dinner, I sat across from Marcus in the kitchen under the pale yellow light. He ate and talked in a monotone voice, like nothing was wrong, like the world wasn't about to end for him. Rebecca, I have to sign some important business papers this week. Maybe you should look them over. They're complicated. I picked up a piece of bread and pretended to take a bite, but in my head, I could only hear Nicole's voice from the recording. Dad, hurry up and sign the fake contracts. I knew he was testing me, trying to drag me into his plan. I gave him a dry smile and replied, Yes, I'll look at them later. I'm tired now. He nodded, took a sip of wine, looking at me like everything was fine, but I knew behind that smile was a man ready to take everything I'd built, a predator waiting for the right moment. Marcus had a few more glasses of wine. His face turned red. He started slurring his words, complaining about a difficult client. I nodded like I was listening, but inside I wanted to scream, Do you think I'm that stupid? When he got up, stumbling, and went to the bedroom, I cleared the table. Every move was slow, controlled, containing the anger boiling inside me. He collapsed on the bed, snoring loudly, and left his car keys on the nightstand, gleaming under the dim light, calling to me. I stared at them, my heart pounding. This was my chance, my moment. I entered the bedroom slowly, careful not to make a sound. Every step felt like walking between pain and resolve, between the past and an unknown future. I grabbed the keys, squeezed them tight, and went straight to the garage. The night was quiet, still. All I could hear were crickets outside. I turned on my phone's flashlight. The weak beam illuminated Marcus's SUV. I opened the door. The smell of gasoline was still there, mixed with that sweet floral perfume. I opened the glove compartment, and there it was, the tube of lubricant, cap loose, dried residue on the edge. I held it in my hand, feeling like I was holding proof of their betrayal. It was clear they'd used it recently. Confirmation that Marcus and Nicole were still playing their twisted game. I took the tube to the kitchen, placed it on the counter, and washed my hands with dish soap. I scrubbed them thoroughly, as if to erase every trace of what I'd just touched. The clean scent didn't calm my anger, but it helped me focus. I opened the utility drawer and pulled out a tube of clear industrial superglue, the same kind I'd once used to repair a broken vase in the shop, a tool of my trade, now a weapon of my revenge. I carefully unscrewed the cap of the lubricant and filled the tube with glue, drop by drop, until it was completely full. I wiped the nozzle, shook it gently to mix it, and tested it slightly. It came out smoothly, just like the original lubricant. At a glance, no one would notice the difference. I smiled faintly, though a storm was raging inside me. This wasn't a game. It was the first step toward justice. I put the tube back in the glove compartment, adjusted the floor mat, the seat, everything just as it was, like no one had touched anything. Before closing the car, I opened the trunk to check. There were only crumpled bags, an empty bottle, and an unused condom lying in the corner. My heart skipped a beat, but I wasn't surprised anymore. I took pictures with my phone, adding them to my growing collection of evidence. Back in the house, I put the keys back next to Marcus's alarm clock. I grabbed an old magazine and sat on the living room couch pretending to read. The dim light fell on the pages, but I couldn't focus on a single word. My mind was spinning. I thought of Kevin, my son. Who believed he was living happily with Nicole, unaware of the truth? How could I tell him that his wife and his own father were betraying us? I thought of the flower shop chain, of the 38 years of work and sleepless nights, of all the struggles with Marcus to defend my dream. He never really understood it, but I trusted that he supported me. Now I knew he was just waiting for the right moment to take everything. An hour later, Marcus woke up and stumbled into the kitchen for water. He saw the keys on the counter and didn't suspect a thing. "Still not sleeping, Rebecca?" he asked groggily. I smiled. "No, just reading a bit. Finish your water and go back to bed." He nodded, drank, and returned to the bedroom, snoring immediately. I looked at him like he was a stranger. This man, who once promised to be with me until the end, was now planning to destroy what I loved most. But he didn't know I'd already started my counterattack. At dawn, I got up. Sunlight was timidly filtering through the flower shop window. I was in my usual workspace, trimming stems, preparing arrangements for a large hotel order. I pressed the shears with all my might, channeling my rage into every cut. When I returned home for breakfast, I made an effort to keep a calm face. Marcus was already up with a cup of black coffee in his hand. I served him scrambled eggs and toast. "Marcus," I said calmly, "I have to travel to San Antonio tomorrow to sign a contract with a new vendor. I'll probably be home late. Can you take care of dinner?" I watched him carefully. He looked up, surprised, but in his eyes something was shining that wasn't concern. It was relief. "A big contract?" he asked, taking my hand with fake tenderness. "Don't worry. Go ahead. I'll handle it." But that spark in his eyes, that slight curve of his lips, like a weight had been lifted. He wanted me to leave, and I knew exactly why. I smiled and nodded. "Thanks. I'll call you if I get back late." He took another sip of coffee, then got up saying he had to get to the office early. As he left, I saw he'd left his phone on the table. The screen lit up with a missed call. The name that appeared was NT. I frowned. My heart pounded. Nicole Thomas. I was sure it was her. Before I could touch the phone, Marcus came back, grabbed it quickly, and turned off the screen in front of me. "I forgot it," he mumbled with a forced smile, and he left. I stood there watching the door close, feeling like I'd been slapped. He wasn't even bothering to hide it anymore. That day, I worked like a machine, delivering flowers, signing invoices, smiling at customers. But my mind was only focused on Marcus and Nicole. I couldn't let them continue their charade behind my back, behind Kevin's back. I needed more evidence, to hear from their own mouths what they said when they thought no one was listening. That night, I pretended to be exhausted. I went to bed early and told Marcus, "I have to wake up early tomorrow to catch the bus, so I'm going to sleep." He nodded, gave me a pat on the shoulder. "Rest. Rebecca, be careful on your trip tomorrow." I lay down and closed my eyes, but I sharpened my hearing, attentive to every sound in the house. Close to midnight, when Marcus's snoring stopped, I heard him get out of bed quietly. The faint light from his phone glowed in the darkness. He left the room with his phone, thinking I was asleep. I stayed still, my heart pounding. Then I slowly got up and followed him on tiptoe. I hid behind the thick living room curtain and watched him stand in a dark corner near the window. He put the phone to his ear and spoke softly. "Yes, of course. Come to the house tomorrow. We won't have to go to a hotel anymore. Rebecca has to leave town to sign a contract. She'll be back late. I heard a soft giggle from the other side, Nicole's sweet voice. That's perfect, Dad. Finally, we can relax. Marcus laughed quietly. Yeah, come early. I'll be waiting. I stood there behind the curtain, feeling my blood boil. They weren't just cheating on me. They were planning to turn my house, my son's home, into their meeting place. I returned to the bedroom in silence, opened a drawer, and took out Kevin's old voice recorder, the one I bought him for college to record lectures. I checked the battery, put in a new one, and turned on continuous recording. I hid it behind the bookshelf in the bedroom next to the headboard, certain it would capture everything. I carefully adjusted the wire and covered it with a framed family photo, the photo of the four of us at Kevin and Nicole's wedding. Looking at it, I felt a bitter taste. Nicole's smile, Marcus's hug, all lies. Before going back to bed, I checked again that the recorder was working. I placed the photo frame just right to hide the wire. Then I lay down, pretending to be asleep. Marcus came back to the bedroom, threw himself on the bed, and snored like nothing was wrong. But my eyes were wide open in the darkness, more awake than ever. I reached for the clock and set the alarm for earlier than usual. I closed my eyes, but not to sleep. I was ready for the next step of my plan. I woke up at 5 in the morning when it was still dark. Only the faint glow from the streetlights came through the window. The house was silent. All I could hear was Marcus's steady snoring from the bedroom. I was in the kitchen with a cup of cold coffee in my hand, staring at the skillet of oil already on the stove. It was the final step of my plan. A simple smoke trap, but enough to expose the truth. I tied a thin string to the stove's ignition switch. I ran it over to the window and attached it to a heavy object, an old metal tin I found in the cabinet. All I had to do was pull it remotely, and the flame would ignite the oil, creating thick black smoke. Enough to alarm the neighbors. I opened the window by the stove slightly so the smoke could escape. Then I tested it once. The smoke rose quickly, forming dark spirals. A warning. I turned it off immediately, checked everything again, and made sure not to leave any trace that might make Marcus suspicious. I put on a jacket, grabbed my large purse, and pretended to be leaving for my trip. Before I left, I went into the bedroom and gently shook Marcus. I have to go to the bus station right now, I said in a calm voice. I'm going to sign that contract. I'll probably be back late tonight. He opened his eyes and in a sleepy voice replied, All right. Be careful, Rebecca. Call me if you need anything. Then he buried his face in his pillow and went back to sleep. I looked at the man I once loved and trusted, now lying there, unaware of the trap waiting for him. I turned away, my heart heavy, but my legs steady. Instead of going to the station, I went across the street to Mrs. Chen's house. She was my neighbor and my friend. She opened the door and looked at me, worried, when she saw my purse. Rebecca, what are you doing up so early? Is something wrong? She asked with concern. I forced a smile. Mrs. Chen, can I stay here for a few hours? I need to watch my house. She frowned but didn't ask anything else. She poured me a hot cup of tea and gave me a chair by the window. From there, I could see the entrance to my house, where Marcus and Nicole would enter and where the truth would be revealed. Around 10:00, a rideshare pulled up in front of the house. Nicole got out wearing a light floral dress and oversized sunglasses, like she was afraid someone would recognize her. Marcus opened the door, looked around nervously, and quickly ushered her inside. I gripped my teacup tightly, my heart pounding. It's time, I murmured, and turned on the app on my phone connected to the hidden recorder I'd left in the bedroom. The sound started coming through my earbuds. Nicole's laughter, the clinking of glasses, heavy footsteps. Then I heard Marcus's deep voice. "All right. We don't have to hide in a hotel anymore." Nicole laughed. "You really know how to pick your moments. The old woman is gone, right?" I bit my lip, holding back the rage as I heard her call me the old woman with so much contempt. Then the bed started to creak, along with other sounds I didn't want to keep listening to. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and told myself, "Just a little longer, Rebecca, just a little longer." A few minutes later, suddenly, Nicole screamed, "What the hell is this? We're stuck!" Her voice was filled with panic, almost sobbing. Marcus growled, "Shut up! Wait, let me see." I smiled. I barely touched my phone and activated the smoke trap remotely. The string pulled hard. The stove ignited. The skillet of oil caught fire. Black smoke billowed out of the kitchen window in thick spirals, spreading outside like an alarm signal. Mrs. Chen gasped. She looked out the window. "Rebecca, your house is smoking." I pretended to be shocked, but inside I felt strangely calm. Neighbors started coming out into their yards shouting, "Rebecca's house is on fire. Call the fire department." A man nearby, Mr. Thompson, quickly took out his phone and called the city fire station. I stayed there, holding my teacup tightly, my eyes fixed on my house. Everything was going according to plan. In my earbuds, Nicole's voice sounded more and more desperate. "Marcus, do something! I can't move!" Marcus's voice roared. "Don't scream! I'm trying!" But I knew they couldn't do anything. The industrial superglue I'd swapped was already at work, leaving them trapped in their most humiliating moment. I imagined them struggling, scared. And a part of me felt satisfied. Not because I was cruel, but because they'd pushed me to this. They wanted to take my flower shop, my family, even my dignity. Now I would make them pay. I looked out the window. The smoke continued to rise, getting thicker. The neighbors were crowding together, yelling in panic. "What's going on?" someone asked. "Where's Rebecca?" "She went out of town for work. That's what I heard," another replied. Mrs. Chen, standing next to me, looked at me with knowing eyes but didn't say anything. She just squeezed my hand gently. I knew she had a hunch, but I didn't need to give her an explanation. The truth was about to explode, and I was ready. Just 10 minutes later, the siren of a fire truck sounded at the end of the street, like a death knell. The red vehicle sped up and skidded to a stop in front of my house. I saw Kevin jump out of the driver's seat in his fire chief uniform, his face tense. My son shouted in a firm voice, "Get the equipment ready, quick! There might be people inside." I looked at him and felt a sharp pain. My son, always so proud of his family and his parents. Now he was about to face the cruelest truth. I wanted to run and hug him and say, "I'm sorry, Kevin." But I had no other choice. I stayed still, letting everything take its course. The smoke from the kitchen continued to rise thickly, making Kevin and his team believe there was a serious fire. My son led the way with a sledgehammer, breaking down the front door. The sound of splintering wood echoed in the air. His teammates followed him with hoses and extinguishers. I listened to the commotion coming from the bedroom, Marcus's desperate shouts mixed with Nicole's sobs. "Do something, Marcus! I can't move!" Marcus growled, "Shut up! Don't scream!" I bit my lip, squeezing the phone where the app was still transmitting audio from the hidden recorder. They were trapped, helpless, just as I'd calculated. Kevin entered the bedroom, and I could imagine what he found. His own father and his wife, naked, stuck to each other on the bed, their faces pale with pain and panic. I wasn't there, but through my earbuds, I heard Kevin's voice falter. "What? What is this? A firefighter behind him murmured in shock, "Oh my God!" Another couldn't hold back and let out a nervous laugh, but Kevin immediately shouted, "Silence!" I knew that cry wasn't just to maintain order. It was my son's last attempt to hide his pain. The humiliation was now exposed not just to Kevin, but to the entire fire team and the whole neighborhood. A firefighter ran out and told Kevin, "Chief, the smoke is under control. It was just a small oil fire, nothing serious." But Kevin didn't reply. I figured the young man was still in the bedroom, frozen by what he was seeing. The neighbors started to gather, crowding in front of the door, pointing and whispering. "What's happening?" "It's Marcus and his daughter-in-law," a woman shouted, her voice full of shock. "Oh my God, how could this happen?" Another chimed in. Mrs. Chen, standing next to me, took out her phone and silently started recording, moving the camera closer to Marcus and Nicole, who were writhing on the bed, their faces contorted with pain. She looked at me with eyes full of pity and anger. "Rebecca, you knew about this, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I just nodded softly without taking my eyes off the window. Kevin came out of the bedroom. I heard the thud of his boots on the hardwood floor. Through the earbuds, I heard Marcus shout in a raspy voice, "Get everyone out of here! Close the door, Kevin!" But it was too late. The whole neighborhood was gathered, their faces showing disgust, their whispers sounding like a chorus of shame. "Father-in-law and daughter-in-law caught in the act. Unbelievable," a man exclaimed. "Poor Rebecca. How did it come to this?" Another sighed. The firefighters, after a moment of hesitation, had to act. They wrapped sheets around Marcus and Nicole, trying to cover their stuck-together bodies, and carried them out on stretchers. I could hear Nicole's broken sobs mixed with her groans of pain. "Please do something. I can't stand it anymore." Marcus just mumbled weakly, "Don't let anyone see us." But the whole neighborhood had already seen. There were looks of revulsion, mocking laughs, shakes of disappointed heads. They were carried out wrapped in thin sheets amidst the growing murmurs. What a disgrace! Father-in-law and daughter-in-law. My God, how filthy! The crowd was still gathered at the entrance when the ambulance left with its siren blaring. Among the loud voices, I heard bursts of laughter. "What a show!" shouted Mr. Thompson. "I can't believe there are two people so shameless in this world." An old woman shook her head and whispered to the person next to her, "Poor Rebecca." I stood among the people pretending to be surprised, as if I'd just rushed there from the bus station. Kevin stood motionless in the yard, his arms hanging, his face pale as a ghost. His teammates avoided looking at him and quietly gathered their tools. I knew Kevin wasn't just shocked to see his father and his wife stuck together in bed. He was devastated by the double betrayal of the two people he loved most. I wanted to run and hug him, to tell him I was sorry for letting him see something like that. But I held back and walked behind Mrs. Chen, who silently accompanied me to the hospital. We sat in the third-floor hallway, waiting while I maintained the concerned look of a wife who just found out her house had caught fire. Hours later, a doctor came out, sweat on his forehead. He looked at me and spoke in a low voice. "Mrs. Anderson, we managed to separate them. Fortunately, there was no serious damage. They just need some skin ointment." I nodded, pretending to be relieved, while my fingers discreetly brushed against my purse, where I'd hidden 2 tubes of thick hot sauce I'd prepared. "Thank you, doctor," I said, my voice trembling to hide my plans. "Can I see them?" He nodded and led me to the nurse's station, where they gave me 2 tubes of ointment. The nurse, a young woman, looked at me with compassion. "Ma'am, this is a very difficult situation. I'm so sorry." I gave a weak smile, and the moment she turned around, I swapped the tubes for the hot sauce I had in my purse. My hands moved quickly and confidently as if I'd rehearsed it hundreds of times in my head. I entered the hospital room with a tube of hot sauce in my hand, feigning concern. "Marcus, Nicole, are you okay?" Nicole was in bed, her hair a mess, her eyes red, unable to look at me. Marcus, still pale, mumbled, "Rebecca, I can't explain." But I didn't let him continue. I placed the tube of hot sauce on the table next to the bed and left. Minutes later, a gut-wrenching scream came from the room. Nicole was covering her face, crying, "It burns! My skin is on fire!" Marcus was writhing in bed, cursing. "What the hell is this? Who did this?" The entire hallway was in an uproar. Patients and family members came out to look. An old woman whispered to her son, "It's them. The couple from the video this morning on the internet. The father-in-law with the daughter-in-law. What a disgrace." Another added, "They deserve it." The doctor ran into the room, asking the nurses to clean their skin and apply a neutralizing agent. But the humiliation of Marcus and Nicole was already public. Impossible to stop. Mrs. Chen's video of them being carried out on stretchers had spread throughout the neighborhood and on social media. I was in the hallway listening to the murmurs, feeling like the whole world was witnessing the downfall of those two traitors. When the crowd dispersed, Kevin entered the room with a thick folder in his hand. I'd called him as soon as the ambulance left, asking him to get the envelope with the evidence I'd saved in the drawer and the 2 divorce papers I'd prepared. He handed me the folder, his gaze empty, without saying a word. I opened it, took out the documents, and placed them on the table in front of Marcus and Nicole. I looked at Marcus directly in the eyes, my voice cold but firm. 38 years of marriage end here. Sign these and then do whatever you want, as long as you disappear from my son's life and mine. Nicole collapsed, crying, looking at Kevin. "Honey, forgive me. I made a mistake. Please, I beg you, forgive me." But Kevin just looked at her, his gaze as hard as stone, and left without saying a word. Marcus tried to grab my hand, his voice trembling. "Rebecca, listen to me. I didn't want this." I pulled away, cutting him off. "Don't say anything else, Marcus. You chose this path." He yelled desperately, "Rebecca, please!" But the nurse came in and warned, "Be quiet. This is a hospital." I turned and walked away without looking back. In the hallway, I saw Kevin leaning against the wall, his head in his hands. I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder, but he didn't lift his face. "Mom," he whispered, his voice broken. "Why did it have to be Dad? Why her?" I didn't answer. I just hugged him tightly, sharing his pain with my own. In that moment, I knew Marcus and Nicole had lost everything, their honor, their marriage, even their dirty plan. But Kevin and I had also lost a family. I only hoped that with time, we would find peace. A few weeks after the scandal, my flower shop was busier than ever. The little bell on the door wouldn't stop ringing. Customers came in and out with smiles and compliments. "Rebecca, you are so strong," Mrs. Chen said, holding a bag of fresh tulips. "The whole neighborhood is proud of you for how you defended your family business amidst all that filth." I smiled and thanked her. People supported me. They called me a strong woman. But only I knew that strength came from the broken pieces of my heart. Every time I looked at the workbench where I'd arranged flowers with sweat and tears for 38 years, I remembered Marcus and Nicole, who wanted to take everything from me but failed, and I'm still here, with my flower shop, with Kevin, and with a new life. Kevin moved in with me right after that day. He didn't talk much about what had happened, but I noticed the change. He wasn't the cheerful, always laughing Kevin he used to be. His eyes now looked deep, as if they carried a wound that wouldn't heal. "Mom, I want to stay here for a while," he told me the first night as he came in with his suitcase. "I'm going to help you run the shop, talk to clients, whatever you need." I hugged him. I felt the warmth of the sun I'd raised and just nodded without asking anything. I knew Kevin needed time, and so did I. Every morning we opened the flower shop together. I prepared arrangements and organized deliveries, and Kevin reviewed invoices and called hotels and event venues. "Mom, the Grand Plaza wants to increase their centerpiece order for next month," he called out to me from the register, his voice calm but without its usual brightness. "All right," I replied. "Confirm the order. I'll prepare more stock." These simple moments gave me a peace I hadn't felt in years. There were no more fake looks from Marcus, no more sweet and calculating voice from Nicole. It was just Kevin and me, taking care of what we still had. Dinners were just the two of us now. We sat face to face in the small kitchen eating simple meals, sometimes pasta with vegetables and chicken, sometimes just sandwiches with tea. "Mom, can you make me some of your lemon bars this weekend?" he asked me one night with a faint smile, the first I'd seen since the scandal. "All right," I replied, relieved. "But you have to help me zest the lemons." He nodded, and in that moment I felt we were slowly but surely recovering. I started making time for myself, something I almost never did in 38 years. I joined a gardening club at the community center where women my age shared tips and told their stories. "Rebecca, you make the most beautiful arrangements in the neighborhood," a woman told me, laughing when I brought a centerpiece. I replied, smiling, "It's a little trick I learned back in Dallas." I also started going to church on weekends. I would sit in silence with the light of the stained glass windows on my face and pray. Not for Marcus or Nicole, but for Kevin, for myself, so that we would find the strength to move forward. Sometimes I would go for walks with Mrs. Chen in the town square, listening to her talk about neighborhood gossip. "You know, Rebecca," she would say, her eyes shining, "everyone is still talking about Marcus and Nicole, but they say you're the one who won." I just smiled without answering. I won, maybe. But the price was losing my whole family. Kevin also started to change. He became less quiet and began telling me about his work as a firefighter. "We responded to a car accident yesterday," he told me one night as we ate dinner. "It was really scary, Mom, but luckily everyone survived." I listened to him, my heart filled with pride. "Please be careful," I said, my voice trembling. "You're all I have left." Kevin looked at me with tenderness. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll never leave you alone." Those words were like medicine. They gave me back the faith that even though I'd lost so much, I still had my son who would always be with me. One afternoon, while the flower shop was full of customers, I sat at the register watching the movement in the street. The bell on the door rang non-stop. The smell of fresh flowers filled the air. I looked at the buckets of roses and lilies and thought about the entire journey. I'd built this shop with my own hands. From a girl in Dallas to a woman who knew how to endure. Marcus and Nicole wanted to take everything from me but failed. I kept my flower shop. I kept Kevin. And most importantly, I kept myself. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you enjoyed the story, you can support me by sending super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.